Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a legal judgment that completely upended the fight for financial fairness in India. We're talking about how one case and one really clever judge finally put a stop to the frustrating and often unfair guessing game of figuring out a person's real income. All right, so let's set the scene with something that happened in Indian courts for decades. It's this classic he said, she said situation. You have one spouse, who often doesn't have access to the bank accounts, saying, look, based on our lifestyle, he earns a lot of money. And then the other spouse pulls out an official-looking salary slip that shows, well, a tiny fraction of that. And that, right there, was the huge problem. The court is stuck in the middle with two totally different stories. How are you supposed to make a fair decision about maintenance payments when you have no idea what the real numbers are? This confusion was basically baked into the system. So for years, with no solid way to check the facts, the courts were forced to play what was essentially an income guessing game. And as you can imagine, that led to a lot of unfairness. And the fallout from this was serious. This guesswork often meant women and children received these tiny maintenance amounts that had nothing to do with their family's actual standard of living. The whole system was kind of broken because the person with all the financial info held all the power, leaving the other person totally in the dark. Now get this. One specific case, Kusum Sharma versus Mahinder Kumar Sharma, was stuck in the legal system for almost 20 years. 18. That single case became this painful, perfect example of just how broken the system was and the crazy delays that hiding financial information could cause. The fact that this one case dragged on for so long was the last straw. A pretty frustrated Delhi High Court, seeing this injustice play out for nearly 2 decades, finally decided, you know what, enough is enough. It was time for a radical solution. So on January 14, 2015, a judge named Justice J.R. Mehta looked at the situation and said, the usual way of doing things just isn't working. He knew the court needed a brand new tool, something powerful enough to cut through all the deception and delays. So he just decided to build it himself. And here's the genius of it. The court's solution was to stop the game before it could even get started. They created this super detailed financial disclosure form, an affidavit, and made it mandatory for both sides to fill it out right at the very beginning of the case. No more hiding, no more guessing. So this new affidavit was basically designed for total, complete transparency. The goal was simple, to pull back that iron curtain that had been hiding the truth about a family's finances for way too long. The new process was so simple, but it was absolutely revolutionary. The second a spouse asked for maintenance, boom. The very next thing that had to happen was both sides filing this affidavit. It forced transparency right at the start, which meant the judge finally had a clear, fact-based picture to work with. And when I say detailed, I mean really detailed. We're not just talking about tax returns. The affidavit wanted to know the brand of your car, your phone, your credit card limits, any club memberships, what you pay your servants, school fees, where you've traveled abroad, all those little things that, when you put them together, paint a very clear picture of someone's real lifestyle. Okay, but why all this focus on lifestyle? This is where the court's logic gets really brilliant. It wasn't just about collecting a bunch of random data. It was about a whole new way of thinking about how to find the truth about someone's money. The judge operated on this simple yet kind of profound idea. You might fake a salary slip to show a low income, but your spending habits, the car you drive, the vacations you take, where your kids go to school, that stuff tells a much more honest story. Basically, what you spend is a way better indicator of your wealth than what you say you earn. And this wasn't just a clever idea. It was rooted in actual law. The court used Section 106 of the Indian Evidence Act. In simple terms, this law says if you have special knowledge about a fact, the responsibility is on you to prove it. And let's be honest, your true income is something you definitely have special knowledge of. So the burden shifted. It was no longer about one spouse trying to find the proof. It was about the other spouse having to prove their claims were true. This put anyone trying to hide their wealth in a perfect catch-22. You basically had two choices. Option A, you could tell the truth about your income, and yeah, you'd have to pay the proper, higher amount of maintenance. Or option B, you could lie on the affidavit. But remember all those lifestyle details you also had to disclose? They would expose the lie, and you could end up facing charges for perjury. Suddenly, lying became a really, really bad strategy. So, what happened in the long run? Did this brilliant idea from a Delhi courtroom just stay in Delhi, or did it actually start a bigger movement? Well, the logic behind the Kusum Sharma ruling was so solid that it ended up creating a new national standard. It started in Delhi back in 2015. But then, just 5 years later, in 2020, the Supreme Court of India took notice. In a different case, they adopted and even built upon these ideas, creating a single nationwide affidavit. And today, that is the binding law of the land for all these cases. So in the end, this one single case, born from 18 long years of frustration, did something truly amazing. It replaced all that ambiguity with cold, hard evidence. It took a broken system of guesswork and turned it into one that demands transparency, making sure that financial support is based on reality, not just on who's better at hiding the truth. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. This ruling delivered fairness by demanding a level of financial disclosure that was pretty unheard of. It makes you ask, when justice is truly on the line, how much of our own privacy do we have to be willing to give up to find the truth?